Before we begin, the team at fixbuncombe.com would like to clarify that both Michelle Woodhouse and her opponent, Mary Guy, were extended an invitation to join us on the show. In the spirit of fairness and providing both sides with an equal opportunity to share their perspectives, we reached out to both candidates. While Michelle Woodhouse accepted our invitation, Mary Guy declined the offer. We respect the decisions of all parties and are grateful to Michelle for participating in today's discussion.
What's up, Buncombe? It's Abby, and today I am here with a very special guest who ties into something very exciting happening around here soon. April 26th, we have our District 11 convention, and I'm here with District 11 Chair Michelle Woodhouse. How are you doing today?
I am great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Raise a flag of liberty, the land of the free, rejecting tyranny.
So first off, I just want to ask you, how are you feeling right now about what you're seeing on the news? What are you feeling about President Trump right now?
I am so not tired of winning. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
It is spectacular. What we are seeing happen right now in our country it truly is a revolution. It is he said this was going to be the golden age. I think it's even beyond that. What we're seeing is an answer to prayers in so many ways. People elected Donald Trump to get in, promises made, promises kept. Elon Musk is uncovering things that even those of us who knew how bad it was didn't realize it was that bad. You know, millions of dollars to study transgender frogs and I mean nonsense things that are unbelievable. So what we're seeing happening with Doge, the cabinet meeting today and the press conference with the cabinet, unbelievable. Donald Trump has assembled a true group of patriotic fighters that put America first at every turn. And I have to say, on a heartfelt way, I love seeing Elon Musk's little son running around and JD Vance's children. It really tells us there is so much hope in America. And that's what I'm seeing. And I hope everyone feels that same level of excitement and hope and a true America First agenda coming to life every day.
I love that answer. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure. So I moved to Western North Carolina about 8 years ago. I moved to the state of North Carolina in 2006, but my family's roots run a little over 200 years deep in the mountains of Western North Carolina. My mother's from Macon, and I got involved in politics really pretty young. I grew up in a household where you watched the news together, you watched 60 Minutes together on Sundays when it was actually news. You read the paper together every day. And growing up in Michigan, you know, everybody was a Democrat. My parents were Union Democrats at that time. Everybody was a Democrat. And I was the president of my class at Michigan State, was a sorority sister with Gretchen Whitmer, the very woke governor of Michigan, but don't hold that against me. And so I was always involved politically, very much from the activist educational standpoint. And then on my birthday, Bill Clinton came out and did a press conference where he said I did not have sexual relations with that woman. And the next day I went and changed my voter registration to Republican and have voted straight ticket Republican every day, every election, I should say, since then. And so when John McCain was running against Barack Obama, that was probably the crossroads for me. John McCain wasn't who I wanted, but it's who we had. But I knew how bad Barack Obama was going to be. I knew that that was a man who hated America. He hated Americans. And we could all see the writing on the wall about how bad 4 years were, let alone 8 years with Barack Obama. And that was really the first election where I started working the polls and making phone calls and knocking doors and trying to get really, really actively involved from the grassroots up, and took my daughter, who was at the time in elementary school, to see Sarah Palin at the state fairgrounds, and really knew that if Barack Obama became our president, that it was going to take our country decades to course correct. And here we sit. Thank goodness for Donald Trump, 47, because 45 just wasn't enough time for him to do what he needed to do. And then when I moved out to Western North Carolina, really saw what I'd heard from generations of my relatives. Politicians think that the state of North Carolina ends at Hickory. And I knew that that wasn't true, and that we had a great group of patriots here that wanted to get involved and wanted to hear their voices heard, and ran for chair of the Republican Party here in the Congressional District, served in that role. Then we had Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who decided he was going to move to a different congressional district, asked me to run for Congress, and I did that. And then the call was really to come back and serve as district chair again. And it's really where my heart is. I love working with our 16 counties. Our congressional district is bigger than 4 states.
Wow.
We're closer to 4 state capitals than our own. And we have incredible patriots here whose voices deserve to be heard. And I'm so honored to be able to share their voices with people across the state and really across the country.
So what about that when you talk about the moment with Bill Clinton that really set your path towards republicanism? What ignites your fire to be a conservative? What ignites it to push towards the Republican cause?
Gosh, that's such a great question. I would say I'm a conservative first and a Republican second, right? And for me, I think when I look at what are the things that drive me, like fire me up, it is when I see people like Tom Tillis abandon the principles of our party and needs to be censured. It's when I see Republicans get elected on the back of Republicans, on the back of true American patriots who stand outside in the snow and rain and pass out voting guides and do the work, and then they abandon us. They turn their back on us. And when I see it with elected officials, when I even see it with our own party, one of the things I'll kind of jokingly say, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but people always know where I stand. And to me, having principled leadership that it stays strongly focused on the conservative Republican platform and follows the rules of engagement as it relates to that. If you abandon the platform, there has to be culpability and responsibility. We didn't elect you to be a moderate. We didn't elect you to work with Democrats on issues that abandon the principles. Now, of course, there are things that bipartisan work is important on, but if it means abandoning the principles of our party, then you don't deserve to have that R next to your name, because there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or millions, depending on what office you ran for, who gave you an incredible gift, and that was their vote. And they gave you that vote to go there and do the work that they sent you there to do.
So, you're running for reelection. So, you talk about these issues of, people being abandoned in the party. When you get reelected, if you get reelected, what are you going to do to help with that?
Yeah, it's such a great question. When we look at the 2026 cycle, coming out of Trump's reelection, it's interesting as I look across the party, not only here in the 11th, but across the state of North Carolina as a key swing state, but you look really around the country, people are celebrating, as well we should, lots to celebrate, but there's a little bit of a hangover where people are like, okay, wow, that was really exhausting. We had to save our country from Kamala Harris, and we lived through 4 years of Joe Biden's disasters. And I think people saw we got Trump across the finish line, and in 4 years, we're going to get J.D. Vance across the finish line for 8 years of J.D. Vance, because we're going to need 12 years to recalibrate our country. But there is so much work that needs to happen right now. And you look at a county here like Buncombe County, where we have 60,000 people vote for Donald Trump, and we'll have 50 people maybe show up at a meeting, or 25 people show up at a meeting of the Republican Party. We got to figure out how do we capture the enthusiasm and excitement of the Donald Trump agenda, the MAGA agenda, and get people engaged and involved. When we go into 2026 here in North Carolina, here in Buncombe County, here in Western North Carolina, we have really key municipal races on the table. We have some really important General Assembly races on the table. Josh Stein, our newly elected Liberal governor here, has said, I'm coming for every single R10 or less. So by an R10, meaning the Republicans should win by 10 points. He is going to fund, the Democrats are going to put money behind Democrats running to take out incumbent Republicans. We have got to work top priority to stop that from happening, because if the Democrats are able to take over the General Assembly here in North Carolina, that means they have control of the congressional maps. And if they get control of the congressional maps, we will move from a 10-4 Republican congressional makeup in Congress coming out of North Carolina to a complete flip of that, because the Democrats, they want the maps, and they often play a long game, and they've shown us what they want to do. So for me, top priority is going to be protecting those General Assembly seats that we have here. We have some, Warren Daniel right here in Buncombe County is very vulnerable. We've got to make sure we're protecting those. We also need to make sure that we're helping the parties raise money so that they've got the resources that they need to get the vote out. And then we need to look at key municipal races. We've got some mayoral races where we have an opportunity for a great pickup. We have some city council races where we have across the district where we have an opportunity for a pickup. And then I think we have to do something that we missed in 16 and we missed in 20 and figure out how do we get the MAGA Maha voter into the tent with us, because we keep continuing to miss that opportunity. And this will be, we just lived through the last time Donald Trump will ever be on the ballot, right? So going into races when he's not on the ballot, we have to be keenly aware of how do we win in those races. And the way that we win is we run to the issues that matter for the American voters. The issues they just told us matter. Keep boys out of girls' sports. Keep boys out of girls' locker rooms. There are two genders. Cut prices, energy independence, close the border, deport the criminals. Get rid of this lawfare nonsense with these woke district attorneys and judges. And they told us, the voters told us, and they said Donald Trump's the one to solve it. What the Republican Party has to do, what we have to do at the most local level, is realize those are the issues that we win on, run to those issues, double down on those issues. And if we can do it, we'll continue, I think, to see some big wins in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina is a huge battleground state. Let me redo that. North Carolina is a huge battleground state, and looking forward to 2026 cycle, what do you think we can do to engage more voters?
It's a great question. I think the first thing that we do is we declare that North Carolina is not a purple state.
Yeah.
This is a red state. We are a red state. We seem to like to elect Democrats for governor, attorney general, DPI, or Department of Public Instruction. So we're thrilled about Dave Bullock being a big win for us in auditor. That's such a huge win. And I know you had an incredible interview with him as well. When we look at that engagement, I think it starts neighbor to neighbor. That's where it starts. Buncombe County did an incredible job just a few cycles ago having these backyard precinct meetings and barbecues where you're just bringing together your neighbors to talk about things and talking about issues that matter in the community. And those are the ways I think that we start to build the base. And we can't wait for the national party to tell us what to do. And we can't wait for the state party to tell us what to do. We started right here, neighbor to neighbor, talking to people and, understanding how do we bring them in. And we bring them in almost like a mission field way, right? We got to feed their stomach and feed their soul before we can get them to really kind of embrace coming into the Republican Party. And so I think we start with all the places that we have in common, and we just talk to people one-on-one.
Do you think those strategies can reach out to younger voters too?
I think they can, and it's really one of the things that's interesting here in Western North Carolina. We're the oldest congressional district. Our average age for Republican is over 60. But when we look at what we see happening, we have young Republicans like you getting involved. My executive board has 2 young Republicans on it, which is unbelievable. We have a new young Republican club that's launching in a multi-county one. I know you're part of that's launching. We've got one in Haywood County. They're meeting on Thursday to kick off there. I saw a great story this morning about how we're seeing young voters right now. Your demographic will be the most conservative generation since boomers. And that is amazing.
Yeah.
We're seeing it in the voting patterns, and we're seeing it, I think, getting back to those traditional values of family and education and home. Yeah, absolutely. So when we see those young voters, I think, again, we go to the issues that are most important to them. And one of the things Donald Trump did that was so brilliant was listening to his son Barron about where do I need to go talk, right? When Barron said, Dad, you need to be on Joe Rogan. You need to be doing these podcasts. Here are the places that you need to go. You need to be in the barbershops. You need to be going places that Republicans don't traditionally go. And for young voters in particular, you all get your news a different way than we do, right? And so we've got to meet young voters where they are. And we have to do things that are compelling for them. It's not a $250 a head Lincoln Reagan dinner that goes on for 3 hours. It's probably not going to inspire them to come out. What are the things that young voters want? What do they need? How do we make sure that we're getting our message out to them? And I think this election, Donald Trump did an exceptional job and a lot for us to learn from to make sure we can replicate it.
Yeah. So changing gears a little bit, Hurricane Helene was a big turning point, I think, for a lot of voters, undecided voters, seeing how the last administration handled it. So how is District 11, how have they been boots on the ground? How are they going to continue to help in that effort?
Yeah, May I share with you something that I tweeted?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so
We'll put it on the screen.
after Hurricane Helene, we still didn't have electricity at our home, and someone sent me a message that David Axelrod, talking head for Barack Obama, had done his podcast, and he came out and said the liberals in Asheville will show up to vote in Western North Carolina. The rest of us weren't going to show up to vote. The Trump voters won't be out. The liberals will show up because they're smarter and wealthier than the Trump voters in Western North Carolina. So I was sitting in my basement. I was working off a hotspot on an old phone. We had no electricity. And I tweeted this. I'm the GOP chair, and I assure you, the God-fearing, gun-toting, MAGA mountain deplorables will crawl over hurricane debris, down mountainsides, and across roads that no longer exist to vote for Donald J. Trump. And I put that up in response to Clay and Buck put something on their Twitter page, and it got about 450,000 views. I don't even know how many it ended up with after I stopped reading it. And I ended up on the Clay and Buck show on Breitbart, other places post-hurricane to talk about the work that we were doing here in getting out the vote. I think what we saw happen here in the midst of unbelievable devastation, and we're seeing it now again with the wildfires hitting the same places that were devastated under Hurricane Helene, is that voters got angry. People got angry. And they saw Kamala Harris come out in her $900 belt and tell them that they might get $750 from FEMA. And they saw a complete lackluster response. NC-11, we had 50 Starlinks donated to us, and we were able to deliver those all over the district. In fact, we took one to Yancey County. Their emergency response departments couldn't communicate with one another, and we got a Starlink out to them that had been donated to the 11th. We took one to Canton, one to Candler. We were taking them to churches that were sites where people were coming to get their supplies and just kind of huddling up as communities so that people could let their relatives know that they were safe and sound. And, it was just what seems like a small thing, but when you can't communicate, I mean, it's devastating. And so we were able to do that. We raised money as every time I went on nationally and locally and statewide radio and media. I sent people to the NC-11 website, which is nc11.org. People could donate. We were able to raise a few $1,000s, gave some of that money to a couple up in Avery County that had turned their store into a distribution center, gave some money to Representative Dudley Green, whose family they lost their home, lost everything. And then also to a young Republican out of McDowell County whose fiance tragically was swept out of the home and died, and found a few days later, and he had been in the hospital as well, injuries that he sustained in the flood. And so we were able to give him just some money to help support him through those efforts. And what we saw happen, I think, was you saw voters come out literally knee deep in mud, who had lost everything, saying, how do I get out and vote? What can I do? They waited in line for hours across this congressional district. We went kind of into the battlefield with Democrat-controlled boards of elections, and were able to get 4 additional early voting sites. It was very frustrating here in Buncombe County. The Republicans didn't work with us on the Board of Elections, sadly, because in Buncombe County, they had set up basically bankers' hours for people to go early vote. So working people were completely disenfranchised. And they originally set them up that way because of the curfew that was in place post-hurricane. But once that was lifted, there was no reason why people who can go vote between the hours of 9 and 5?
Yeah.
I mean, either you have a job or you've got kids, family responsibilities, and it was really unfortunate that we weren't able to get that ball moved down the field. But the great news, Auditor Dave Bullock is now in charge of the boards of elections. They will be run by Republicans across all 100 counties. The state board of elections will be run by Republicans. He's auditing the voter rolls, so 285-year-old people who are obviously not alive can't vote. And he's also auditing the DMV. Critical things that I think, as we look at what we just saw happen with the hurricane, people lost their IDs. There were all kinds of things that happened, and we put in place, working very closely as district chair, I worked very closely with the General Assembly to make sure we were doing the things that we needed to do to make sure every voter in Western North Carolina could get to the polls and vote without any impediment. That means standing up early voting sites, extending voting hours, being able to accommodate people who had lost their IDs, lost their homes, et cetera. But we know what the Democrats were trying to do. They were fighting us on those boards of elections. They were fighting election reform. They have been fighting Dave Bullock on auditing and cleaning up those voter rolls. And even here in the most liberal of the counties in the congressional district, voters overwhelmingly said we want citizen-only voting. So we saw people really speaking to issues that I think were really critically important to them. The other thing that I think as we look at the hurricane, how telling is it that the very first place President Donald J. Trump came as president was Asheville?
Yeah.
We were there together. We saw him, he and Melania coming, shaking hands, talking to us out on the tarmac. He cares about Western North Carolina. J.D. Vance cares about Western North Carolina. We're seeing federal bills coming from Congressman Chuck Edwards. We're seeing state bills come from all of our Western North Carolina representatives. We are seeing Dave Bullock put in place a dashboard to audit those dollars so we can make sure that the dollars go where they need to go. We're seeing changes in regulations and red tape that are impeding people's ability to rebuild. And I really saw my role as the district chair was to get out there and bang the drum and make sure if there was a media opportunity to talk about what was happening here in Western North Carolina to take advantage, and I did that. And to also make sure that we turned out every single voter. We were doing everything that we could. We had up on our website if people needed a ride. We were bringing people in Batcave out on four-wheelers to get them to the polls, whatever it took to get people to the polls. And you saw people standing out waiting and waiting and waiting. They were not going to let Kamala Harris take this country. And Western North Carolinians saw very clearly what the Democratic Party thought of them, how they were valued or not valued, really, in this case. And we're so grateful that President Trump has never taken his foot off the gas in protecting us.
That was an incredible answer. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So changing gears a little bit again, can you talk a little bit about your reelection? What inspired you to run again? What are you hoping to accomplish in these next 2 years?
For me, I love serving as district chair. I really do. I love having the voice of Western North Carolina. Republicans, when I sit at NCGOP meetings, at state meetings, at the Central Committee and others, so many patriots have come to me and said, please run again, please run again. It's a lot of work, right? It's a volunteer job. It's a lot of work. As I said, we're bigger than 4 states. So, I was in Avery County. I was in Clay County on Thursday night when it was snowing. I was in Avery County on Friday night when it was snowing. And this is March. It's not supposed to be snowing. But I love every bit of that work. It's such an honor to help support and lift up our 16 counties and be able to make sure that they feel like they have a voice. As I said, we've got work to do to protect our General Assembly and make sure we're winning local races. We did some things here in the 11th that I think are interesting as we look at kind of this race. We were the first congressional district as an executive committee to vote unanimously to call for the removal of Ronna McDaniel when she was the RNC chair. We were the only congressional district to, put forth a question to the Republican Party here in North Carolina to find out about payroll and some things, kind of acting as our own little private Doge here in the 11th. And we were doing that. We wanted some accountability because we saw candidates like Michelle Morrow and others that we think we should have got across the finish line, not get any money. And we want to know where the money went. And so we asked those questions respectfully, but we want to know those things. And back in 2023, I was the person who wrote the censure language for Tom Tillis that was voted on the floor of the North Carolina State Convention, and Henderson County's own chair, Brett Callaway, was the one that delivered that motion off the floor. So Western North Carolina has a strong conservative voice. We do, and I think we need a district chair who shares in that strong conservative voice. And for me, that's why people have asked me to run for reelection. After great prayer and consideration, of course, that's where I believe that I'm called to serve and will continue to do it as long as the people of the 11th want me to do it.
Yeah. So what do you think your greatest accomplishments have been while you've been doing it?
Wow. I think getting us through Helene, it really, and that was, not me, that was us. After Hurricane Helene hit and we were making phone calls to make sure everybody was safe and sound and trying to get in touch with all the leadership, my phone started ringing off the hook from the RNC and from the NCGOP. And Trump, we knew at that point, we didn't know it was going to be a landslide. We were prayerful, but we didn't know. But we knew Donald Trump had no path to victory without North Carolina. And North Carolina could not deliver for Donald Trump for a third time without Western North Carolina delivering for him. And so I'm getting these phone calls, Abby. People would call and say, what can I do to help? Oh my gosh, Trump can't win without you. What are we going to do? And I said, we got this. I know my people. We've got this. We will make this happen. And to see how, as a district, we came together and people were so completely focused on serving our communities through the disaster, but making sure that we delivered for Donald Trump, and people were able to stay very focused on both of those things. And I worked incredibly closely with every district chair on getting out early voting. I was having voter guides printed for people and getting them, putting them in my car and delivering them up to Avery and to Yancey and other places to make sure people had everything that they needed, making sure that we had the polls covered. I was out 18 days of early voting, but it was to stand side by side, not because I thought I was the difference maker, but I wanted to stand next to the people that had put the blood, sweat, and tears in across this congressional district. So when I look back on these 2 years, I would say our biggest accomplishment was being able to deliver Western North Carolina with a bigger number in 24 than we had in 20 for Donald Trump. And to be able to hear North Carolina called earlier than we'd ever heard it called before, and know that we did it. That was us. That was Western North Carolina. And that was the accomplishment of many people getting outside of their comfort zone, and people having to see their neighbors really live or them themselves live through tragedy like we've never experienced. I think the national spotlight on us, there was a great deal of uncertainty. Our people who have just lost everything could actually take the time to go vote. And we saw, you're darn tootin'. Yeah, don't mess with Western North Carolina. We will come and we will make our voices heard. And I'm so grateful that we were able to do that. And it was such an honor to see President Trump come here and continue to thank the voters of Western North Carolina for the work they did. He never stopped pouring into us. Don Jr. was here. J.D. Vance was here. You can look now, since the Trump administration has moved in and the cabinet positions are in place. We've seen Sean Duffy here, and we've seen Doug Collins here. We're seeing so many members of the cabinet come. U.S. Senator Ted Budd started his 100-county tour, and where else would he start it other than the 11th Congressional District? And it's a testament to the fortitude of the people out here. But those of us who live here, we knew exactly what we would do, and exactly how we would get it done, and we did it.
Yeah. Well, you've been a delight to have on here. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people?
Well, I would say visit our website, nc11.org. Come to the 11th Congressional District Convention. If you've missed your own county convention, you can still come if you're a registered Republican. We'd love to have you. Congressman Chuck Edwards will be speaking. State Auditor Dave Bullock will be speaking. Michelle Morrow will be speaking.
Oh, wow.
And we will also have with us some key Western North Carolina heroes there that we will honor as well. So we hope you'll join us April 26th, Tuscola High School in Waynesville. Doors open at 9 a.m.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to the convention. And thank you so much for listening, and tune back in soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.